Thank you all so much for joining us today for our presentation on the Azores. My name is Erica Gustafson. I'm the Managing Director of Quest Travel Adventures, your specialist in the Atlantic Islands. Today I'm going to host an informative website about the Portuguese Azores located in the Atlantic Ocean. First, just a little update on tourism and health situation in Portugal. As it relates to Azores, there are two important dates that I want to talk about. June 15th is when tourism resumes to Portugal and domestic flights start up to the islands again. And then July 1st is when the nonstop flights from Boston on both TAP Air Portugal and Azores Airlines resumes. Over the last 3 months, the Portuguese Azores has had a total of 146 COVID-19 cases on 6 of their 9 islands, and currently no one remains hospitalized. So we're excited to be welcoming people back to the Azores, and let's get started. Today we're just going to do an informative website about the Azores, talk about the different islands within the archipelago, what there is to do, what kind of accommodations they have, how to get around, and what sort of packages we offer. Please feel free to type any questions you have into the chat box as we go along. The Portuguese Azores archipelago has 9 islands in total, 5 of which are visited a bit more in the central group, and 4 of them are a bit more rugged, off the beaten path, and limited accommodation for tourists. The official language in the Azores is Portuguese, although English is spoken throughout. The official currency is the euro. There are international airports on the 2 main islands of São Miguel and Terceira. There are nonstop flights year-round from Boston and multiple flights daily from mainland Portugal and most other European gateways. The distance between the furthest easternmost and westernmost island of the archipelago, Azores, is 375 miles, and the islands are about 900 miles off the coast of Portugal. These distances are important to remember because you can't necessarily do a day trip to each one of the islands, as they are pretty spread out. There is also only a slow ferry from mainland Portugal that operates a few days a week and takes over 14 hours. So this is a destination of natural beauty. It's a destination for the outdoor person. It's a place where people stop to smell the flowers. The Portuguese really know how to enjoy a relaxed pace of life here. Weather is similar to that of North Carolina, but there's no chance of snow. They do get 4 seasons a year, with the summer having highs in the 80s and the winters being a high in the 50s. There is a greater chance of rain in the winter season as well. So this photo shows a great view of the coastline in São Miguel. And as you can see, it's not really a beach destination. There are some beaches, not many, but very few hotels are being built on or near the beach. All beaches in Portugal are public. There are a lot of activities to do when visiting. We do recommend some time to relax. So let's talk about one of those activities that also includes relaxing. The geothermal hot springs are something popular on the islands. This one happens to be the Terra Nostra Gardens. This was designed in the late 18th century when a wealthy merchant from Boston became an honorary American consul to the Azores and built the house that you see in this picture, officially created the gardens and the grounds, and the geothermal hot spring. It's opened year-round. It's said to have essential minerals to restore one's energy and to heal the skin. The water has a very high iron content, rendering it an orange-brown color. Temperature is usually between 95 and 105 degrees Fahrenheit. A tour of the gardens and time to dip in the hot springs is included in many of our packages. If you're doing a self-drive, entrance is only €8, and you can rent a towel for just €2. In Furnace Town, right nearby, the sulfur springs are even hotter, and some of the locals have harnessed the heat for boiling corn or cooking food underground, which is called the cozido style of cooking. This typical Azorean cooking style can be found in many of the restaurants throughout the island. As I mentioned earlier, this is a destination for the active client. This doesn't mean that your client has to be fit or athletic necessarily, just those clients who like to explore the outdoors. Canoeing and kayaking on Lake Furnace, where the sulfur springs are, is a very popular activity. The lake is along the inside of an extinct volcanic crater, and it has become a haven for migratory birds. When you're in the middle of the lake, it's encouraged to take a moment to just be completely silent because you'll be just amazed at how noisy the birds are all around you. Canyoning and rappelling is something unique that the Azores has to offer. And on San Miguel, it's one of the few places in the world that offers this experience at a beginner level and to all ages. They supply the gear, we have great guides, lots of detailed instructions, and you can walk through the rainforest on the lava-created riverbeds and then rappel and sometimes jump off of the waterfalls that you encounter. Whale watching and dolphin watching is available year-round. The Atlantic Ocean jet streams bring migrating whales of all different species, and then pods of bottlenose dolphins have taken up residency around the islands. Mountain biking at the Sete Cidades around the crater and in the caldera is definitely a very popular activity. This is one of the most photographed spots in the Azores because you can see the entire rim of the caldera. You can also walk along these trails. The Sete Cidades parish is one of the smallest on the island, but it's the largest in size geographically, almost 3 miles in diameter across the crater. And speaking of hiking, there's a lot of hiking available on all of the islands. Hiking trails that go through villages to high viewpoints, descending into some of the calderas, and then some waterfall hikes. As activities go, they also have golf year-round, so your clients who live up in the Northeast perhaps can tee up in the winter. There are 2 18-hole golf courses on San Miguel and 1 on Terceira. And who knew that the Azores would be a hot spot for your tea lovers? Chinese settlers passed through the Azores and cultivated the land to grow tea. An old-fashioned tea plantation still using some of the traditional style equipment has been operating since 1833 and is family run and is open for tours for your clients. Food in the Azores is a highlight, and many people will tell you they're going to the Azores just to eat. It's not expensive to eat out on the island. Most of the produce is grown locally. Obviously, there's a lot of seafood in the natural waters, and then cattle is raised for both beef and dairy production. And speaking of dairy production, cheese is a main product in the Azores. The islands of the Azores only represent 3% of Portugal's total population, but they produce 50% of all the cheese consumed in the country. Cheese making has been a part of Azorean life since the Azores were first settled in the early 1500s, and now they produce over 24 different varieties of cheese. Another food we love to talk about is pineapple. Pineapple is actually the #1 export of the Azores outside of Portugal. Over 2 million pineapples are exported from the Azores each year. There are a few plantations that you can tour when visiting the Azores, and you may be able to taste some of the locally made pineapple liqueur. The Azores have a lot of festivals, celebrations that are also great for visiting, from religious ones like the Festivos do Espírito Santo in July, or the more traditional San Joanes musical festival on the island of Terceira in June. New Year's is another big celebration as everyone comes out to the streets, enjoys music and food well past midnight. So let's talk about a couple of the other islands. The second most visited island of the Azores group is Terceira. Angra do Heroísmo, which is the capital of Terceira Island, was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the 1980s. As settling began in the Azores way back in the 1500s during the start of the Age of Discovery for Portugal and Spain, ships that had set off for the west from Europe would stop here to refuel. Angra was one of the first towns settled and has since become one of the 3 regional capitals, responsible for the government of the Azores, and is also the location of the Azorean bishop. The marina on Fayel Island in the town of Horta is the busiest in the Azores archipelago and has long been a stop for shipping vessels and yachts to refuel or pick up additional crew and supplies. Over the years, the marina walls and walkways have been covered in paintings created by visiting sailors over the years. And they're really writing wishes, talking about their ship, making a mark as they pass through the Azores. This Horta Marina is also where you can catch a daily ferry over to Pico Island, which you can actually see in the background here. It's one of the few ferries in the Azores between islands that runs every day year-round. It takes about 35 minutes. And speaking of Pico Island, it's home to Mount Pico, which is considered the highest mountain in all of Portugal. Many people travel to Pico to summit Mount Pico. You do need a permit to summit the mountain, or sometimes they just hike on some of the volcanic trails around the mountains. Pico Island is also where most of the whaling in the Azores was formerly done, and there's a great museum that pays homage to the whaling communities that used to live here and talks about the type of whales that migrate through the Azores. Pico also has a great cheese factory and is open to visitors, as well as a small vineyard that you can have lunch at. If you decide to visit Pico, it's best to book a small group tour as transportation on the island is limited. And if you're staying on Pico, it's best to rent a car, but please note that there are no automatic car rentals available on Pico Island. The last island to highlight is Santa Maria. This photo is actually a view of Santa Maria from San Miguel Island. You can see it in the background. Santa Maria Island is called the Island of the Sun, and it's the furthest east and it's the furthest south, and it gets the most amount of sun. It's the only island in the Azores with a golden sand beach, and it has very little development on it. It can be done as a day tour in the summer by ferry and year-round by flights, although in the off-season there's not much to do. The island itself is very sleepy. It's a draw for hikers, and it's a draw for scuba divers. So in terms of accommodation, this is a destination known for its quaint boutique accommodations. Luxury here is celebrated in a different way, with peaceful, relaxing escapes, ocean views, perhaps a hammock on the porch, not necessarily in the amenity-filled way of the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons style. Compared to mainland Portugal, the few five-star accommodation on the islands in the Azores are rated by Azorean standards. Some hotels have been refurbished over the last few years as the tourism sector has grown, but many have not. This is not a destination that's seen much new build, and you won't see any name brand properties on the islands. Your clients with Marriott points, there's no Marriott on the island. Depending on if travelers just want to relax and take a couple tours, or perhaps are looking to rent a car, there are a variety of accommodations from things in the old section of town, downtown along the marina, up on a remote cliff with amazing views over the ocean, nestled into the little towns along the coast, or even B&B style. If you take a look at our website, you'll find a list of our most popular tours. These tours can operate any day of the year, and they can operate on a minimum of one passenger. These tours are actually sample itineraries. They can be customized to your client's interests, budget, choice of hotels, activities. They can be purchased as is, or we can add in whatever your client is looking for to make their trip a little bit more unique. Talking about adventure and being active, a lot of our clients like our 6-day Azorean Adventure Seeker. This tour stays on the island of San Miguel, and it kind of is for the client that's on the go. You rappel down the waterfalls, you canoe Lake Furnace, you go biking in Sete Cidades, you get to go to the natural geothermal hot springs. And then if there are activities in here that your clients maybe want to substitute out, we put a hike in instead of one of the others, or we add a hike in so that they have a fully activity-packed adventure. Combining two islands, the islands of San Miguel and Terceira, we have our 8-day Best of the Azores. The inter-island flight is included, as well as centrally located hotels so clients can walk around, get dinner in the evenings easy, and then excursions around the islands. So just a little recap of kind of what to expect when visiting the Azores. It's great for history. It's great for food. Lots and lots of natural beauty and lots of outdoor activity. Really great weather. And I put in there no hurricanes with a little asterisk because you may have seen in the news last fall, they did have a hurricane pass about 200 miles off the westernmost island, which did cause a little bit of disruption in travel there. This was the first time that their weather was affected by a hurricane since the early 90s. So it's still considered relatively hurricane-free. It is a Zika-free destination. As we saw from the first slide, at the moment, it's a COVID-19 free destination. It's a lesser known destination, but it's still part of Europe. And then Quest Travel offers its travel agent partners 12% commission on all of our packages. So now we can take some questions. And if we don't miss any of your questions by any chance, please feel free to contact us either email or phone, or through any of our messages on our website portal. Let me just take a look at some of these messages. Okay, so we talked a little bit about weather. August is probably the warmest. We do see this as a year-round destination. We have clients that travel in January and February. They're looking to get away maybe from the snow areas, still looking to be outside. San Miguel Island is called the Green Island, as it's known for just lush vegetations, and something is in bloom all year round. I mentioned on the first slide, but in case some of you weren't there in the beginning, the Azores had a total of 147 cases of COVID-19 over 6 of the 9 islands, and no one is currently hospitalized. So they are putting protocols in place for the first round of visitors. Portugal has, in all of their airports, has instituted infrared temperature scanning, and there will be testing on site in airports. Public transportation is available, although it is limited to the main destinations, kind of the main towns on the island. If you are there, you can rent a car. You can rent a car for a day. You can rent scooters that are also available. But the optional tours that are available when you're staying in the main towns, especially on San Miguel and Terceira, are actually pretty affordable. So you don't feel like every time you take a tour, you're wasting your money. In any case, I'll just show you again a quick map of the Azores so you can kind of see how far apart they're spread. When I talked about the hurricane coming to the westernmost islands, that's Corvo and Flores. The hurricane last fall traveled about 200 miles further west. So it really only affected those 2 islands on the west area. San Miguel Island all the way on the east is the most touristed island because that is where the most amount of flights come into, followed by Terceira right there in the middle group. The packages on our website do not include international airfare because people are coming from all over, and we don't know whether people want to take the flights from Boston, which is the only current U.S. gateway. There are nonstop flights from Toronto, so there are 2 airports in North America that are servicing the Azores directly. A lot of people also do combine this with a stay in Lisbon or Porto, which you'll find on our website that we also have packages combining those 2. Driving is on the same side as the road as we drive here in the US. And while an international driver's license is always encouraged for traveling to Europe, it is not required. Oops. And the last question is, can you fly to Madeira directly from any of these islands? There is 1 flight per day that flies from Ponta Delgada, San Miguel Island to Funchal in the Madeira. It's important to note that this flight takes 3.5 hours and you do change time zones. So if you're going to combine the Azores and Madeira, they're not necessarily near each other, and we do recommend at least 3 nights on each of the islands. We are asked if restaurants are opening and festivals will be happening this summer. Most festivals this summer have actually been postponed. We haven't gotten notification for the fall festivals, but we do know that, for example, the San Joanes Festival in Terceira, slated to start in 2 weeks, is not happening. Restaurants are beginning to open as phase 3 of Portugal has commenced June 1st. Restaurants are allowed to start reopening, and we do expect that as of the beginning of July that most restaurants will be back open. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Please email us if you have any other questions, and visit our website. And again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us.